Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Signature Generosity Podcast. I'm your host, Blair Cunningham. Signature Generosity exists to inspire people to experience impactful generosity. We believe everyone is made to be generous, and each one of us has something to give. Today we have Jeff Shinabarger, founder of Plywood People and author of More or Less, talking about what it looks like when we decide to use what we uniquely have to make a lasting impact on others. Take a listen as Jeff encourages us in identifying what we have in excess, whether it be your money, time, possessions, even food in the pantry, as the first step in finding a purpose for all we have.
It's great to be here with each of you today. I don't know about you, but Atlanta, for me, it is so fun to live in this city right now. There is so much good stuff happening in this place. And in the midst of the last year, there's all kinds of different emotions that have gone through the last year with different people in our community. But man, this place, there's so many good things happening. I was just talking to you on the way here, or sitting right over here, and hearing the work that he's doing and starting the school. And every day, I get to hear about new projects beginning here by people that are giving their lives to restoring these broken places or problems that they see in the world. And so I get to be a part of that all the time. So there's so much to be excited about. So if there's anything that you do today and you walk away, I hope you're encouraged knowing that this city, that there is something special happening at this special time in our city. So anyway, it's great to meet you. I like Terry said, I'm married. My wife's name is Andre. I wish she was here because she had to live through all these stories with me. Her perspective is always a little different than mine. We do have two kids, a 7-year-old and a 5-year-old. They are tons of fun. We went trick-or-treating this week, and which brings its own memories, right? And over the next 30 minutes, I'm going to share a little bit about generosity. That's why we're here today. And a few things to listen over the next 30 minutes. I'm going to talk about the time my dog was on CNN. I'm going to share about all caps stuff. That's my fourth point. And the last thing I want you to know is a story that we're recently talking about with my kids, literally talking through 3 little jars and cash in those things. Does that sound good? So we'll talk through it. Okay, so this all started for me, a project called Gift Card Giver. I was at a table just like you, a circle table like this, at a wedding reception with my wife. We were sitting with 8 complete strangers, and to be honest with you, the wedding reception was not that exciting. Have you ever been to, there's 2 types of wedding receptions, right? There's the really fun ones, and there's the ones that you're trying to figure out when you can leave, right? This is one of those ones, and but it ended up being a really defining moment for us. I always had this theory that everyone has a gift card in their purse or in their wallet that's been sitting there since the last Christmas. How many of you have a gift card in your purse or wallet? That's great. You can give them to me after this. That'll be good. And so I said, this is my chance. I'm going to run it. I'm going to see if my theory is right. So complete strangers sitting at a table just like this. And I said, I have this theory. I bring it up to these people, complete strangers, and they all start reaching into their purse. Meanwhile, my wife is kicking me under the table. You know that moment. Like, why are you doing this, right? So they all had gift cards. And they had them on the table. We added them up as about $52 in gift cards. And I remember telling them, I said, either you can give me, I'm going to ask you, I'm a complete stranger, you can give me those gift cards, or you can keep them and it'll probably stay till the next Christmas. But if you give them to me, I promise I will give them to someone in need. And they all, complete strangers, all kind of looked at their gift card, looked at me, and then they threw the gift card my way. And on the way home, I remember my wife, still embarrassed, was like, you're onto something here. So we called our friend. He created a website literally on the way home. We bought this URL, giftcardgiver.com. Next thing you know, there's a story written on this idea because we just this is when Facebook just began. We put it on Facebook. And then next thing you know, AJC hears about it. The Atlanta Journal-Constitution writes a story on it. And within 6 months of this wedding reception, we had 23 national stories on this thing called Gift Card Giver. We did not have a 501c3 listed. We had nothing. We literally said in the FAQs, we might use your Starbucks gift cards for staff meetings. Like that was like part of the thing. But the last thing I mentioned earlier about CNN came to our living room, did a story with my wife and I, and for some reason my dog got a feature in the CNN thing. I was like, this had nothing to do with gift cards or anything. All that to say, this is what started this journey for us of these creative projects where we started realizing from a generosity standpoint that so many of us have elements of excess in our lives. We just haven't identified it in the right way yet. And out of our excess, we can do these incredible things for other people. Out of that excess, we can live a lifestyle of generosity. So this is the first project that happened. And in the midst of that, I started getting all these random phone calls. By the way, we've given over $300,000 away in gift cards. Isn't that crazy? That project today is not the greatest focus of what we do today, but it spawned on a lot of other projects. What ended up happening is people like you that heard about this crazy little project that we started, and they would be at lunch with someone, and they'd say, this young friend of theirs would be pitching them on some generosity project or creative project, some social justice project or a social entrepreneurial project, and they were really excited about it. They had all this passion, and they would say, that's a really interesting idea. I know this guy that started this gift card thing that maybe you should go talk to him because he actually brought something into existence. It was a little crazy, and maybe he can teach you. So lunch after lunch, breakfast after breakfast, coffee after coffee, I started meeting with these people. And that ended up starting this organization called Plywood People. Plywood is a nonprofit in Atlanta that leads a community of startups doing good. In the last 5 years, we've worked with 446 projects, which is crazy. Now, that sounds like a huge number. I wish I could tell you that there's 446 thriving organizations today. But that is not true. You know, if you've ever worked with any new project, some of them work, some of them don't, some of them have a timeline. We work with nonprofits, we work with for-profits, and we work with for-profits that have yet to make a profit. They're called broke, right? You might all have a friend like that. But it's been really amazing. The thing that has brought all these people together is they ultimately have this passion for doing something bigger than themselves, right? They see something broken in the world. They see a problem that needs to be changed, and they feel responsible for fixing it. They ultimately know they're not going to be the solution. But even if they made one small step further in that path of that problem, it's worth the time. It is worth the energy. That's a beautiful thing to see in our society. And you probably all have a friend like that, or it might be you that cares about those things. So that's what Plywood People does. We have a process we work people through now. We have an online process that Terry's leading a class right now on. We take them into retreats. Well, for 3 days, last week we worked with 15 projects that 13 of them were amazing. I'm just kidding. They're such incredible people. We got to spend 3 days with them, working on their projects, asking them the hard questions, connecting them to advisors and mentors, talking about things like how to create a budget or how to build a kind of marketing plan for you, or how to ask people in a fundraising context. These are real questions that people need advice. We have people that meet monthly. We have a space in Cabbagetown, if you know that area. But this is the work we get to do every day. And it all started because of this generosity project. And it led to other projects. I remember 10 years ago, my wife and I moved, right after the Gift Card Giver project started, we had moved to a neighborhood called East Atlanta Village. Now, right now, East Atlanta Village is filled with all these young, hipster, cool kids of Atlanta. When we were there, people were like, it's a little scary. Are you sure you want to go there? We saw so much transition happen in that neighborhood. And in the first week, it was the second day I was there, a guy rang the doorbell, and he always rang the doorbell a little bit longer in that little annoying way that it just holds on for a little bit too long. So I knew exactly what it was. It's this guy named Clarence. I opened the door, and Clarence said, hey, my name is Clarence. I take care of the lawn at this house. This is the second day I had owned the house. So he said, so you just let me know what to do, and I'll get it taken care of. And I said, what? I own the house. I just bought, wait, what's your name? And that started this new relationship with a friend named Clarence. And it was the first time I had ever had to wrestle through how to love my neighbor when my neighbor had no home. And Clarence was an incredible neighbor. I saw Clarence more than any other neighbor in the neighborhood, which was interesting. But that day changed how I saw the world. Being involved in a relationship with this new friend changed how I saw the world. And the reason why I say it's a friend, for a long time I wasn't sure if he was my friend. At one time, he came to the door and he said, can I use your phone? I said, I guess so. And And then I had an iPhone. He's like, how do you use this thing? This isn't a phone. Like, what is this thing? So he ended up, I dialed in the number. He's talking to this lady that needed some yard work done. And he said, well, if he was leaving her a message, and he said, just call this number back. Wait, what's your number? I said, call this number back. This is Jeff. He's my friend. He takes all my messages for me. So I said, in that moment, it was a really amazing moment, because in one hand, I realized he had referred to me as a friend, which was a really deep moment for me as an individual. And the other hand, I realized I just became his administrative assistant, which was an interesting thing in its own. But over time, Clarence, I learned so much from him. And one night, my wife and I we were playing a game in our dining room, and we noticed it was really raining really hard. And Clarence came to our front door and rang the doorbell in that unique way that he does. And I opened the door, and he was drenched. And you guys know the idea. If you have a hoodie on, you pull it so tight you can only see about this much of his face, right? And I said, Clarence, what can I do? How can I help? And he said, I just want some dry clothes. And he had learned about this gift card thing. So he said, and a gift card to McDonald's, because he knew he could wait out the storm if he could buy a meal at McDonald's. And I said, for sure. So I remember turning around in my house. I have a 3-bedroom, 2-bathroom house, going to our master bedroom, walking into my closet, which is 6 feet by 6 feet, a walk-in closet with a door, and overwhelmed in that moment that I had a closet that was 6 feet by 6 feet. And we all have different sized closets. That doesn't matter. But this friend of mine was on the streets, right? He didn't have a home, and I looked at all the clothes I had and the excess amount of shirts and sweatshirts and t-shirts and socks and underwear and shoes and jacket. I had more than enough. I really did. And I remember putting some stuff in a bag and giving it to him and realizing that day changed me, because he made me see the world through his lens. Like, he didn't force me, but I saw things differently. I realized, man, I have been given a lot. And what is my responsibility with that? What is our responsibility with that? So then it caused all these other experiments that my wife and I began doing. And we still do experiments today. We just got done doing a crazy one in an Airstream for 6 weeks. But the first experiment, I told my wife, Clarence would always come to our door, and we would always say, we can get you something to eat if you need something. And so I wondered how much food we really had. So I said to my wife, could we see how long we could go without going grocery shopping? And she's like, what do you mean? And I said, well, let's just see how far we can go out of our pantry, out of the freezer, just out of a fun little social experiment. And she's like, okay, but I want milk. I was like, okay, we'll get milk. And she said, and one time a week I want to go out to eat. It's just like, so I can eat whatever I want. So we did this. So we did this social experiment. We wanted to see how many days we could go without going grocery shopping, right? And it started great. Like, there was like frozen meats, there was frozen vegetables, and then it was like pancakes 3 times for dinner. We just kept going and going. We each gained about 7 pounds in the experiment. So I wouldn't recommend, it's not a good diet. But we lasted 7 weeks. And we don't have a very big pantry, honestly. We lasted 7 weeks. What was it? And the reality is, and my wife and I always joke about this, we always come home after work and you open the refrigerator and what do you see? There is nothing to eat in the house, right? That statement. But really, we had so much. And the point of this story and the other stories, there's a whole bunch, in the book, there's a whole bunch of experiments we've done. We've had friends see how long they could go without with wearing everything once from their closet. They start realizing they have seasonal clothes. There's a series of unique social experiments that we did and our community did. And the point wasn't that, like, you should do this. The point is that we have an excess in our lives in some capacity, right? In some way. So how do we start to recognize that, and how do we live out excessive generosity out of that excess that we've been given? Defining what is enough is a subjective definition. The easiest thing for me to do is to define enough for you, right? That's easy. That's not another cookie, right? It's easy to define it for someone else, but it's really hard to define it for yourself. It's a subjective definition. What is enough for you will never be enough for me. One of the most wealthy men ever in history was a guy named Rockefeller. Someone asked him, what is enough? And his answer was so clear, a little bit more. Isn't that the truth? We all kind of have that perspective in our lives a little bit too, which is challenging. There is something more that we always want. But anything more than enough is excess. Anything less than enough is suffering. The distance between enough and excess is what we want. The distance between suffering and enough is what we really need. So what if there's things in our lives, everyday things we don't even think about, that we could take, that we have in excess, that we could address and give to people that really, really need it? How powerful is that? How much fun is that? How exciting is that? I had 7 weeks of food that I could feed Clarence, right? And the reason why I wrote the book, honestly, was because Clarence passed away a few years ago. And I started realizing, wow, this guy changed how I saw the world. And I need to share that with more people. So what do you have in excess? What capital do you have that you could give to others? There's 4 forms of capital that we share about. And some of you guys say, well, I don't know if there's 4. I'm going to have a little creative luxury on the 4th, so just work with me. The first is intellectual capital. So this is what wisdom we have, what we know that others don't know, right? I look in this room, you guys are successful. You have probably been through hard times and good times. You've been through bad economies and great economies, right? You have had to work to get your first home. You've had to do all these different things that you experience today that all the people in my community, in their 20-somethings, or 30-somethings, and this is their first project they've ever started, they need wisdom that you have. They need advisors to tell them how to overcome fears that they're trying to figure out to bring something into existence. These are real things that you have lived through that you can contribute to other people in this city. So there's intellectual capital. There's social capital. Social capital is a huge thing that we all have in excess that we forget commonly. Social capital is the access that you have to communities that the average person does not. And I'm challenged by this all the time. Last week on our retreat, there was a girl named Sierra. She has this amazing project where she's doing mentoring to high school girls all over. I think she's in 4 schools in the south side of Atlanta today. She has an incredible heart. And I looked at one of the challenges we always give to our community is how do you get to the budget, your first budget of $100,000. And if you can get that, then you can probably pay yourself something. So it's a really big challenge for a lot of people we work with. And I asked her how much she had raised this year for this project, and she had raised $6,000. And she was giving her life to this. And if you met her, you would be amazed by what she is doing. She doesn't care if she gets paid or not because this is her mission in life, right? This is her purpose. But I'm like, man, I need to introduce Sierra to the people that can make this idea go. Because if you meet her, you'd be like, yes, this is what you're supposed to do. This is what you're supposed to do with your life. Let's get around her. Let's give her access to these. And she said to me, it's not that $100,000 is really scary for me. She said, but I know I need to get there. She said, but I don't know anyone that can help me get there. She just needs access to the social capital that a lot of people in this room have. There's a lot of people that have access to that. Another scenario for me was that combined both intellectual capital and social capital is something that Chris and Terry did for me a year ago. They took me to a fundraising event. You know, you guys all probably have somebody pushes you to buy a table for something. I'm looking at Blair. I had him buy a table for my fundraiser just recently. This is great. You get access to these fundraisers, and you're trying to find people to introduce the mission to and all that. But what's crazy is they invited me to a table one time to experience a fundraiser at a level that I had never experienced. And what it did was they used their social capital, invited me, and they taught me how to do a better fundraiser. That was a huge value to not just me, but the future of our organization. They introduced me to something I never had access to before, right? So there's intellectual capital, there's social capital. There's financial capital, that's the one you guys all pretty well know, right? But I think about in the financial capital, how do you use the funds that you are giving to others to leverage it into a greater return on investment, right? How do you challenge someone with a gift that you give to say, hey, match this? Or give me a report on how well you did. I want to see what the social impact was from this giving. These are good things to do. But the last one, which is the most fun, the creative luxury one, is the all caps, we'll call it capital, all caps, the word stuff. And I want you to think today, beyond the intellect that you have, beyond the social influence, what do you have at home right now that could benefit someone else? At our house, we have 3 bins. We have trash, we have recycling, and we have this giving bin. It's the stuff that we're not using anymore that we know that could enhance someone else's life. Sometimes it's just, there's some girls in our lives right now, some women that are single moms. They need some of our kids' smaller clothes and toys, right? Or maybe it's access to something that is common for you but not common for a friend. Maybe it's like tickets you have to a Hawks game or something, that you have season tickets, and guess what? You could give those 2 tickets to a couple that haven't been on a date in the last 6 months. Think about these things that you have that you're using every day that you forget other people don't have access to that. What do you have? What stuff, capital STUFF, do you have that could benefit someone else's life? It could be a nonprofit, or it could be a friend that just needs a night away, you know? Out of our excess, we can address issues of need and suffering. It's a beautiful, beautiful thing. I remember the first fundraiser I ever did. I was freaked out. First time I ever had to ask money from somebody. And most of the room, is funny, Jeremy, I'm friends with Jeremy. Jeremy was there, and some other friends were there, and I knew most people in the room, and there was about 6 people in the room that I had no idea who they were, and I was asking them for money. This was crazy, right? And I was shaking. It was the worst pitch I've ever given in my life, I'll be honest. You would have been uncomfortable for me. But I remember coming up afterwards, and this couple, Rick and Lynn, came up to me, and they said, "Hey, we're Rick and Lynn, and we're in." Complete strangers. I had never met them in my life. And I said, "You're in for what?" They're like, "We're going to give money. Like, we're going to be a part. We love your vision. Like, let's do this." And I was like, "What's your name?" Right? And it was crazy because that was the start. That was the financial investment, right? And then they said, "Oh, and we have a lake house." They said, "We have this lake house. And the reason why we first bought this lake house was to share it with people like you so people could use it to further their missions." I was like, "What do you mean by that?" They're like, "Use our lake house. We have, like, it's an extra, it's excess that we have. It's a second house we have. Can you use it?" I was like, "You really want?" "Yes, we can use the lake house. Yes, we will do this." And we host retreats now at Rick and Lynn's house and at Chris and Terry's house. This is something that they had in excess, but they didn't know how to integrate it into a work in some way. And then in the midst of that, Rick has become one of our best mentors in our community ever since. He's using his knowledge working on these projects to enhance other people's projects, right? And I say that to kind of go, wow, like how we use our time, how we spend our money, it shows who we love, what we're going to be known for in the future. You guys all, I know you have an excess of knowledge and intellect. I asked you just earlier, I said, are you ever surprised by a new project? You've lived through all those experiences with so many people, and these people in this room today, you guys have so much wisdom that can help so many people in this city. And in the midst of it, you're probably going to want to support the work they're doing too. That's going to happen because you're going to be so energized. I remember if Rick was here today, he'd say, "Jeff, after all that story, he would say, I didn't give you anything." He said, "Being a part of this vision has given me so much joy." It's amazing when we start giving generously to people in our community, out of the incredible gifts that we have, the excess that we have, in return, we get so much more from it, don't we? So today, I know your lunch is short and you probably have to go back to work or whatever you have to do. But I hope as you leave today, you think, man, what is one thing that I have that I could generously give to someone else? And it might be clothes from your closet. It might be a sandwich next time you see someone on the streets. It could be tickets to a game to a couple. It could be paying for someone else's date. But I hope you use it to excessively give to someone in this city. There will be so much good that happens from it.
I hope you enjoyed hearing from Jeff. I know for me, the question of what is enough really hit home. It definitely is easier to define what is enough for someone else before wrestling with that question ourselves. I like Jeff's point that generosity is experienced in the context of relationships. It may be like the friendship that Jeff had with his neighbor who did not have a home. But I have found that it is equally important for us to be relationally connected with organizations and causes that we are passionate about. Thanks for listening. For more information on Jeff and his work, visit plywoodpeople.com. To learn more about what we have going on at Signature Generosity, visit SignatureFD.com/Signature Generosity. I hope you've been inspired towards impactful generosity. We look forward to seeing you next time.